Hello, today I'm going to tell you about a brand new feature in Access called VBA Project Signing and explain how, as developers, you may find this new feature useful to you when distributing your applications. There is a lengthy article about this on my website, isleofdogs.co.uk, VBA Project Signing, and the idea is that you will apply a code signing certificate to ensure that your files are not tampered with or altered in significant ways after distribution. This also allows your users to guarantee that they have got the file that you actually did intend them to have. Let's go on to the next slide then. This is all part of Microsoft's attempt to improve trust and to ensure greater security, and there are various ways that you add trust to files. The first thing you need to do, as I'm sure you're already aware, when you download any files from the internet, you have to unblock them to remove something called the mark of the web, or MOTW. Then the next stage will be determined by what macro settings you have in the Trust Center. I'll explain that properly as we get onto the example app. There are two main methods that you can use so far, either to enable content, which makes the document itself trusted, or you can place it in a trusted location. The behavior in each case will allow you to run code, but it will actually be slightly different in each case in the way that it works. This new feature then is to sign your VBA project with a code signing certificate, and as I say, it's a new feature to Access. It actually was available back in the days of Access 2003 with MDB files, and in fact you still can sign MDB files now. But when the ACCDB file format was introduced in Access 2007, they removed that functionality, and only 15 years later, they've finally got around to rectifying that. The feature's also been available in Excel and in Word, so that any of the documents of those sorts that contain code, you've always been able to sign, but not in Access till now. It's only at this stage available to Office insiders, that is people on either the beta channel or the current channel preview. It will shortly be released to those on the current channel, however. And at this stage, Microsoft is seeking feedback to make sure that there are no bugs when it is fully released. Okay, let's take you to the article on my website and download the example apps that I'm going to use to demonstrate this. It's a lengthy article because it's a very different way of working. It starts off with the announcement from Microsoft on the 1st of December that this feature was available for testing in the insiders channels, and followed by a warning from me reminding you, because it's pre-release software, it may contain bugs. I found one, I've reported it, and it will be dealt with very soon. They want feedback before it's widely released. Do not at this stage use this feature with your production databases. It won't work for all users, remember. Then some background information about what code signing certificates are, where you get them from, how you actually then go about using those, so how to actually install them, the two different sorts of certificate you can have, and once you have installed one successfully, how you then go about testing that and seeing what impact it has. I'll explain that shortly, and then after that we've got two files available for download. Now they're the same file, except one of them is the standard Access ACCDB file, unsigned, and that will work in any version of Access. The signed one will only be any different if you have one of the insider channels for 365, as I said. I'll download both of those. And they now should be in my download folder. And in fact, I'd already got one there from before, which I'd forgotten to remove. I'll take the latest ones of these, and I'm going to move those to a folder that I set up specifically for this purpose. VBA sign test, it should be empty, and place them in there. I'm going to work mainly with the unsigned one. At this stage, I don't need my web article anymore, so I'll close that. Extract the file from the zip, and now if I right click on that, you will see it's got the mark of the web added there, so it's actually blocked at the moment. And normally at this stage you would just tick that to unblock it, but I'm going to deliberately fail to do that at this stage. And if I open the file, and I should have the default settings for macros at this stage, a pink bar appears saying security risk. Microsoft has blocked macros from running because the source of the file is untrusted. And whether you click on that or this will take you to the same web article. telling you then that they're doing it for your own benefit, even though it gets very, very irritating having to do this over and over again. So as I say, I've got the default macro settings. If I go into options, trust center settings, macro settings, the default at the moment, and has been for many years then, disable all macros with notification being warning bars like this. The other three I'll tell you about later on. As far as Office files in general are concerned, any code is called a macro, except in Access, where macros have a different meaning. So within Access, really this means code settings as well as macros here. So let's cancel that. If I try and click on any of these, nothing happens because of course the code isn't trusted yet. So we'll come out of that, go back. I'm now going to unblock the file, properties, tick unblock. So that's step one. I have removed the mark of the web. Step two then, reopen, and we will again get a security banner, but a different one this time. The standard one with the enable content button. At this stage, still code will not run. I still haven't trusted the code. And I can either tick that button here, but I'm going to show you the alternatives to doing so. That will make it into a trusted document. If we click here, it just gives you slightly more options here. So enable content here, click the enable content, allows the active content to run code, make it a trusted document, or the advanced options here, not much different here. Help protect me from unknown content, that just does the default, or just enable the content for this session. If you tick that one, it means next time you open it, the security banner will appear again. If you have saved your file to a restricted folder such as the temp folder, even if you tick the enable content button, then it will still only work for that session. But for other folders, many other folders, it will work continuously from now on, whether I place it in the same folder or move it somewhere else. And at this stage then, we can run code. As you see then, it's run some code which has taken just under a second to complete. Run it again. You may notice it's fairly sluggish pressing these buttons here. Every time this code is running in about 0.8 of a second, which is fairly slow and realistically might actually start to make your users feel that the program's not working very well. And let me just show you what happens if I close that and now reopen it, and watch the speed that it actually opens at to get to that startup form. It takes several seconds. Again, not something that's going to impress your end users, I think. And the reason why it's so slow to load the form, and the reason why it's so slow to run the code, again about 0.8 of a second, is that before anything that requires code to run happens, it's running what's called an anti-malware scan. And the anti-malware scan interface, or AMSI, AMSI for short, will run not just the first time you run your code, but every time you run your code, whether you've changed the code or not. And I'm just going to clear those there. There's some instructions about how to use this, by the way, in case, so you don't have to keep looking back at the website here or remember what I've done here. But if I now at this stage change my project, I'm going to add, have I got any results? No, I've just cleared them. Let's just add a couple of results here. And if I change the code, I'm not going to do anything particularly important here. But I could put in some real code there. Create an update query. So I'm going to change the data where it's 797. I'll change that to 10, something absolutely ridiculous, and run that. Updated the 2 rows, you'll be able to see then that's fine. So therefore the project has been changed, and say that had been done by somebody after distribution, and then they said, oh, have a look at this file, and forwards it, and then it doesn't work. Well, I've had this happen to me where people have said, I got this file from your website, and when I ran it there was a problem, and when I checked they actually hadn't downloaded it from my website, they'd actually obtained it from somebody else who changed it and messed up my file. And at the moment, this method here of trusting the document gives you no protection whatsoever against that. So if I now close that, I'm going to now copy this to a trusted location. And the one I'm going to use is my files area here. And if we put this down here, and I've actually got one in there already, so we've got a brand new version of this. Now it's in a trusted location. If I just reopen Access here and just show you, then if I go to the Trust Center, we're still in the default macro settings here, but I've now got a trusted location here, gmyfiles. So anything that runs from there is trusted. Why does that matter? Well, I haven't changed anything, so it'll work now. Look at the times. Instead of nearly 800 milliseconds, it's now running in around 30 to 50 milliseconds each time. And the reason is that once a file is placed in a trusted location, it's deemed that the file is safe to use and the anti-malware scan doesn't run. Therefore, it takes much less time for the file to run code. And similarly, if I close it and reopen it, you'll see that it's also much faster to load the first form there. So trusted locations are significantly better in terms of performance, and for most people they're perfectly happy with using that. But still, even in a trusted location, I can change the code and it doesn't in any way affect the way that the application runs. I've got no protection as a developer against somebody changing my code. Now time to show you the new method, VBA Project Signing. But to do that, I need to first go into an older version of Access, which will not allow me to do it, to show you what happens if you try this on Access 365 current channel or anything before that. So I'm going to close that. Okay, so I'm now going to open my file in Access 2010. Once again, I need to enable contents because I haven't trusted the folder for this area here. And when I run the tests, because Access 2010 predated the anti-malware scan, it doesn't matter whether it's in a trusted location or not as far as it's concerned. It's still running quickly. But as I said, no protection against somebody changing the code. So let me show you now how you would go about adding a certificate if you were able to. Because it appears that you can do so when you try. You go into the VB editor, you go to Tools, and you'll see Digital Signature. At the moment there is no certificate applied here. If I now click on Choose, if I have got a certificate, and of course I have, I've got a code signing certificate that I obtained from Sectigo, and I use this, and I have done for many years now, to attach to files that I distribute via my website. I do them as .exe files, where I bundle all the files together with using an installer, and I sign the files there. But I've never been able to sign the Access file itself until now. So it looks like I can do so here. Click on OK. All seems to be fine, doesn't it? Alright, so it says it's signed here. And now when I actually go to do that, it says it cannot save the digital signature at this time. You may be in a database under source code control. No, I'm not. It might be read-only. No, it's not. It uses ACCDB file or ACCDE. Yes, of course it is. And I want to sign it, and I can't. If it was an MDB file, it would have accepted it at this stage, but it doesn't. And it tells you a way around it using the package and sign feature, which has since been deprecated. But if I now go back to here, you will see there is no certificate applied. So I've got nowhere at all with that. So I'm going to close that again, quit, and this time I'm going to reopen this then with Access 365. and you can see again that it's back to being slow here. So the next stage then is I'm going to change this, and I just want to, I'll just show you then I'm in the Access 365 current channel preview. That or beta will work. So I'm in version 22.12. So coming back to here then, the next thing I need to do is to change the macro settings. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change it from disable all with notification to change it to disable all macros except those that are digitally signed, which of course none are because I haven't yet applied a certificate. Now if I change it to that, I no longer get notifications. In fact, I don't get notifications with any of these. The top one there will disable everything, but you don't get a warning banner. Second one, you know the default. This one only allows digitally signed macros, in other words, projects signed with a certificate. And the last one here, enable all macros, will actually give you no protection at all, so you really are vulnerable to malicious code. So I've changed that to accept digitally signed macros. Click OK again, and now I'm going to close and reopen it for that to take effect. Okay, I've changed my computer settings so that Access 365 is now the default program again for ACCDB files, and I'm going to reopen this from the trusted folder. And when I do so, no warning appears here, but the code will of course run because I'm in a trusted folder. If I try it from my untrusted folder, I now get a different warning. Block content, trusted document settings have changed, not all content in this file is allowed to run. Review your trust center settings or contact your IT administrator. So once again, from the untrusted folder, no code can run. Now what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to go back into the VB editor, go to Tools, Digital Signature, and you see I've got a certificate available for signing, so I'm going to choose that one. Here I could have just clicked OK, but just to show it's the same as before. Click OK. It seems to have worked as before, but this time it really has worked. So once I've actually done that now, just to show you, yep, it's still there. So I now have signed my code. It won't do anything at this stage though until I now close and reopen this. And I'm going to reopen this signed file now. The title is no longer applicable. I'm going to do that from an untrusted location, so I'm going to copy it to the desktop. And when I open it this time, you may be surprised to see that the security warning appears once more. And the reason for that is there's one more stage that I need to do. And if I click on here and go to here, we can do the same as before, make it a trusted document, but I've now got an extra option. And now you can see on here that I have the option of trusting all documents from this publisher. And remember, the code was signed in my personal name here, the code certificate rather. If I click OK, and to show you that I've now trusted my certificate, you can see my name has now been added to the list of trusted publishers here. So cancel that here, cancel that there, run the test. We're in an untrusted location, not yet taken effect. Let's close it and let's reopen it. Open quickly this time. Yep, we now have a situation where we've got the code running quickly from an untrusted location because it's running with a digitally signed certificate. So let's now see what happens if we change something. So I've distributed the file to my client, and then the client decides they're going to do something to it. So they decide they will add a comment, or they can add some code, or they can take some code away. Watch the status bar in a second here. If I now save that, modifications to the database or project have invalidated the signature. Now at the moment it still runs, but let's close it. And now you see that the signature has been removed, it's been invalidated, and code stopped running again. So as soon as any change is made to the application, the certificate that I applied before is no longer in force. Now, as a developer, I can re-add that. My clients wouldn't be able to do so, but I can. Of course, one thing I should mention at this point is code signing certificates are expensive, and they also take some time before the necessary checks are done to ensure that you're a valid or reputable developer, if you like, and therefore, right, it's not something you might want to just go into blindly without thinking through the details. So there is another method that you can use for testing purposes. You'll see here, as well as the one that I've got from a professional company called SELFCERT.exe, I've got various ones that are in my own name, either in my own personal name here, or that are in my MOTW system one here, or my self certificate here. I just click on that one. I can actually use that in just the same way, and that will allow me to run the code again once I've actually closed it and started it again. So self certificates work in exactly the same way as purchase certificates, except that they're only for test purposes. Then don't allow you to actually distribute your file and then still to apply. So at the moment, of course, right, it's in a different publisher here. So if I click on more details here, enable content, advanced here, trust all documents from this publisher, which is Mendip Data Systems. So that's now been added to the list as well. And you can see there we've got both the self-certificate and the professional one. So this will work on anybody's computer, although it will not allow anybody else to use it. It can only actually be applied on the computer to which it was issued. It cannot therefore be used by a client without purchasing it themselves, whereas self-certificates here will only work on your own computer. So how do you create a self-certificate? Well, let me just show you this. I'll just close that here, but before I do, let me just show you what happens now if I alter my action query here. And again, keep your eye on here, but this time I'm afraid you won't see anything. There should be a message there because that's also invalidated the signature now, although you can't see that there. This is the bug that I mentioned earlier. If I now come back into this again, having invalidated my signature, back to the warning, this is the bug. When I click on here, that no longer is possible to click on. When I click on here, there's now a rather worrying message saying the additional signature has been tampered with after the content's been signed. That isn't actually true, it's an incorrect message, but now at this stage the only way I can trust that again is move it back into my trusted location and reapply the certificates here. And that's a bit of a flaff. Let me just show you though. Let's make a self-certificate. Now the self-cert program is in the same location as your Office files are installed. And if we just go to details here and scroll down, and it's called SELFCERT, and if we click on that, very simple then, okay, basically you can create a certificate of any name you like. So I haven't done one in my Isle of Dogs synonym before, Isle of Dogs on Access. There we go. Click, successfully created. So now from anywhere at all, but let's do it from this folder here. Tools, digital signature, let's remove that one, choose more choices, and there should be one, I hope. Yes, there is, called Isle of Dogs on Access. So I can now add that as my test certificate if I wish to do so. What at the end are the advantages of this? Well, first of all, the disadvantages, it's clearly, at least the first few times you do it, more difficult to apply. It's easy to get it wrong, and I did get it wrong the first few times I tried to do so. So you need to obtain a certificate, either a purchased one, which is what you'll need if you're going to distribute your files with this, and then apply that to your files before you distribute them. But do not make any changes to your code after you've applied the certificate, because that will immediately invalidate the certificate. Distribute it with the certificate signed. Your users will then need, the first time they open it, to trust you as a publisher, and after that all files from you will always work without further checks being needed. The advantage to you as a developer is that if anyone else tries to change your files after distribution, it immediately invalidates the signature and stop code running. They can, of course, move it back to a trusted location and continue that way, but it means that your files are more secure than they were previously. So let me come back into my PowerPoint. Let me summarize the difference between the methods. The existing trust options that you're familiar with. Trusted locations. Code runs quickly because the anti-malware scan AMSI has been bypassed. That's the good news. But the bad news is there's no protection against code changes that are added subsequent to distribution. The reason why this has now become an issue is some organizations deliberately block their employees from placing files in trusted locations, and therefore users are stuck with trying to actually run them from non-trusted locations after enabling content. And as you've seen, it runs slowly because the AMSI scan runs every single time you do it. The alternative for them may be to try turning off the macro protection, but that's not a good idea. It doesn't really help, and it adds a major security risk. Whereas the new project signing feature, currently only available for Office Insiders, but within a month or so it will be available to everybody, probably by the end of the year. You will therefore, to use it, need to purchase a code signing certificate from SELFCERT.exe or VeriSign or any other professionally approved certificate supplier, or you can test the process using self-certificates. You can't distribute your files with those, they won't work on another computer. It's definitely more complicated to set up, at least until you get used to it, and the publisher, you as the developer, is the publisher of, and that you must be trusted by the client. Once you've done that though, code will run fast from any location because again the AMSI scan is bypassed. The main advantage though is that protection against changes to your project after distribution will invalidate the certificate, stop the code running, and changes, as you saw, to action queries also invalidate the signature, and that message that you got is a temporary glitch that will be fixed. Related articles then. Main article on my website then, unauthorize.co.uk VBA Project Signing. There's a separate article that I wrote a month or two ago about trusted locations and the fact that code runs slower from untrusted locations even after it's been approved. There is a blog from Microsoft about the anti-malware scan interface, AMSI, and why that was introduced a few months ago and why it actually has had the effect of slowing down code where it actually is running. And another one here that makes it very clear that applying a certificate will actually allow that to be bypassed as well. So it's a complicated topic. I'm sure we'll all get used to it very quickly, but at the moment it is something that's easy to struggle with and make mistakes on, and hopefully though this will be a start in helping you get to grips with this new idea. Thanks for watching. As always, there's more access to videos to follow, and if you found this particular one useful, click the like button, leave a comment. Do subscribe, and then you'll be notified whenever I do upload something new, and I'll always be grateful for further topics. Thanks for watching. Hope it's been useful. See you soon.